you see some 15-year-olds that are, straight into RLCS. I ask these pros, do you hang out with like your RL friends? And they're like, I don't have any like friends, like RL friends, or I don't have any friends from school because like this is my life. All my friends are online, all my friends are Rocket League. And I'm thinking like, wow, like that is crazy to me. Like the fact that they didn't really have that social life because they shut themselves out and just played Rocket League for such important years. Although it might benefit their career now, they just haven't quite had the same life experiences, which certainly does hurt them later on down the road.
Players drop out of school around those young ages, which I don't think is a smart thing. And I just think that we shouldn't really be encouraging 13, 14-year-olds to be playing 7+ hours a day of rugby to have a chance of achieving their dream, because obviously we only see the people who have actually achieved it, right? People think a good career in rugby league is like, they won a major, that's a good career. But like realistically, at this point, a good career is making a regional. There's players that are trying to go pro that scrim the same amount as pro teams. They're never going to make it, half of them. Not even half of them, like 90% of them will never make it.
When RLCS began, the minimum age requirement for players was 15. At the time, this made sense. The game's rated E for everyone, so there's no need for players to be 18. But over the years, this low minimum age has surfaced itself as a problem for the players themselves, competitive scene as a whole, and viewing experience for the fans. Despite a large number of people in the scene calling for an increase in the minimum age starting around 2022, in 2024 Rocket League instead lowered the minimum age to play RLCS to 13. And this has only exacerbated the problem. The first and foremost issue with Rocket League's low age requirement is the toll it takes on the social lives of the players. In order to reach the top in-game, you need to sacrifice all your free time and put it into practice. For a willing and able adult, that's not a huge problem. But for a kid, that'll change his life forever. Less time spent with people in real life, less time spent developing into a responsible young man, and less time spent learning about important things. And it's not just once they reach 13 that this starts. Pro Rocket League players have a long history of reaching incredible heights before they even reach eligibility to play in RLCS, starting from way back when Scrubkilla was 13 years old and one of the best 1v1ers in the world. So these kids in many cases start playing when they're 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, if not younger, and play an unhealthy amount for years in anticipation for when they can begin their RLCS careers. These young guys spend all day playing the game with the sole purpose of reaching the main event of RLCS tournaments when they come of age. But even when they do make it, some of them still don't feel satisfied. Former pro player AJ spoke to this on Twitter recently. He explained that he felt like he was living a double life in school, afraid to tell people about his career as an eSports player because they'd treat him differently, and that the money isn't worth the damage it does to some people. And of course, having 15-year-olds as part of a big business operation, signing 6-figure contracts with esports orgs, and playing in front of arenas full of thousands of fans is not a normal way to develop adolescents properly. Esports are not like regular sports. A high school sports team is a healthy environment for young people. It teaches them discipline, teamwork, and sportsmanship. It provides them daily exercise and a great environment for fostering friendships. And it's no more than 3 hours per day after school. Working to become a Rocket League pro is none of this. Discipline? Forget it. Even the top teams show up late every day to their scrimmages. Teamwork? Half the teams end up with childish drama that makes them split up. Sportsmanship? Rocket League is a very toxic game where everyone blames their teammates. Exercise? Haha, very funny. Friendships? Maybe, but ones that are with people who live in different parts of the world. Only 3 hours a day? That'll get you to Grand Champ maybe, but almost certainly not pro. In 2022, pro player apparently Jack wrote a Twitter thread detailing issues with kids playing in RLCS. He explains how the pressure of competing can spiral out of control if it's not handled properly. But he also gets into my next point, the lack of professionalism in the esport. Jack explains that putting the tremendous weight of big contracts and team building decisions on the backs of children is troublesome. He later gets into scrim times. RLCS teams need to scrimmage each other to get better, and they do this multiple times every day for the majority of the season. But when half the players are in school and half the players aren't, this creates an unhealthy dynamic in which the older players need to adapt to a poor sleep schedule because all their scrimmages are set in the evening after school has ended. Jack explains that if the minimum age was raised and all players were out of school, teams could scrim earlier and more often, providing a healthier schedule, leading to increased career longevity and higher levels of play. As it stands currently, Rocket League has one of the shortest career longevities of any competitive environment. Even the absolute best pros in the world will often only have a 5-year career, ranging from around age 16 to 21. As Jack says, this problem isn't necessarily caused by a lack of practice or lack of in-game mechanics, but rather the lack of maturity and professionalism within practice schedules and overall environment of the scene. It's not just the schedules which are unprofessional though. In early 2022, pros attested to the poor quality of practice.
You can't bump, you can't take the boost, you can't win more than 2 games.
If you bump a few times, the scrim's chalked for sure.
When teenagers run their own practices, this is what happens. There's also Roldiz, a former coach, who accused his players of not playing the game and needing cash incentives to play ranked. I purposely haven't mentioned who these players are because that would contradict the point of this video. They're just kids, and they shouldn't be thrust under the microscope and put in charge of an international operation. Combining this lack of professionalism with the social problems creates a dangerous environment for players after they retire. Some of these players have dropped out of high school, never gone to college, and then are forced to retire at 21. And where does that leave them? Well, in many cases they have a large sum of money, but with no education, no transferable work experience, and often a poor work ethic because they've only had to play video games their whole lives. This is dangerous for the futures of these players. If they're not one of the smart ones who are able to build up a big brand on social media and transition to being a creator, they're left with nothing. If they finished high school, could they go to college after retiring? Sure, and in many cases they do, especially given that they might get a free ride to play CRL in the United States. But will they do that? Maybe not. And that's because of the lack of natural development that they've had in their lives. At the beginning of the video, Jack also spoke to the fact that many of the teams trying to go pro, bubble teams as they're called, practice just as much as the pros. They play 50, 60 hours a week of Rocket League, scrimming and grinding ranked in many cases even more than the top pros, who might just be more naturally talented. With the downsizing of RLCS starting in 2024, there are fewer eSports orgs to even pick these players up. If they do make it as one of the lucky few to join a team where they get a salary, they likely earn at most $2,000 a month. Only the top 1% of the top 1% of teams actually make a livable wage. For countless bubble players, RLCS only provides a distant false hope and a remarkable waste of time. One more problem with Rocket League pros being child gladiators is the poor viewing experience. If the players were older, fans would be able to interact in better ways. As it stands, we often get stiff and nervous winner interviews after each match, and develop almost no proper personalities off the field.
And they've definitely helped a lot. And yeah.
There's also the question of how fans should interact with players. Most of the people who attend LANs are young adults who have a disposable income. This creates an odd dynamic where the crowd is made up of adults who look up to child players. And it makes for awkward moments, like when we see young players cry on stage, or crowds booing players from the teams they don't like, whether they realize or not that they're booing kids. So how should we fix these problems? Well, it's simple. Rocket League should increase the minimum player age. While at first we might see a dip in the level of play, over the months and years, the healthier schedule and more mature scene will make for a more sustainable esport. Whether the current pros should remain grandfathered in is another question to be considered, but the minimum age change should absolutely happen. Another thing that RLCS needs to fix is the region lock system. As it stands, anyone can compete in any region, so all of the smaller regions get flooded by European players trying to punch down and steal the LAN slots. A team of 3 Spanish players has dominated the sub-Saharan Africa region over the past 2 years. The Middle East is dealing with a bunch of new import players, and half of the players in the APAC region are not from Asia. Regardless of the problems facing Rocket League eSports, it remains in my mind undefeated as the best esport in the world. It's incredibly easy to watch, easy to understand how talented the players are if you've even played 5 minutes of Rocket League, and each goal in a close match has an unrivaled excitement to it. So hopefully they can fix these problems. Thanks for watching, everyone.